Oh, I like those. What have we got on the counter? Just randomly select some medicine, take it home, start knocking it back. Sound like a good way to get rid of your illness?
Yeah.
In fact, what might happen instead? You get like your original sickness plus some weird like chemical things going on in your brain. So likewise with Buddhist practice, a lot of people practice Buddhism like, what's the coolest practice? What's the most fashionable practice? I want to be on that, because that's what the cool people are doing. Okay, but what do we need? What's our own situation? We've got to deal with that. Right? Different practices don't deal with specific problems. So for the desirous type, we contemplate on impurity. It's like you look at the flip side of things. I'll give an example. How many of you have gone out to eat somewhere, and one of your friends, or maybe yourself, before you eat, your phone's got to eat. So you take a photo of the food and you post it on Facebook and add a comment like, look at this awesome, look at these fajitas, they are amazing. Who's done that before? Okay, you don't have to put your hand up, I don't want to like incriminate you. Okay. Pretty common, right? You haven't even tasted it, you don't know what it tastes like. But even this looks so good. But whatever goes in must come out. Who has seen the aftermath of that delicious lunch? Taking a photo and post it on Facebook. Have you seen that before? And why not? You have, yeah. And why not? Why not? Because that's called social suicide. Okay. But these two bits go together, right? These two bits go together. So you reflect. A lot of desire comes by overly fixated on the pleasant side of things, forgetting that there's also downside. These jeans are amazing. They're so cool. I look so sexy and attractive. And like, it'll cost you $500. Don't worry. But you don't have any money. You don't have a job. I know your credit cards are maxed out, but they look so good. Crazy, right? So you gotta look on the other side in as much as it takes to decrease the desire. The point is not to get fixated on the negative side of things. That would miss the point. Just like you don't want to get addicted to your medication. It's just to treat the problem. Period dissatisfaction, those genes will not bring you lasting satisfaction. They will change. One day they'll get old, etc., etc. The aversion type, the best contemplations are with regard to love, compassion, and so forth. See that other people, just as we want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. Other people also want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. So rather than like getting all stressed out with the waiter, like that waiter, he's like saying things about me. Hey, you know, these people are just trying to do their job, they've had a hard day, we have some compassion for them, right? Different contemplations. The basic idea here is as I just said, just as we want to be happy, so do others want to be happy. Just as we want to avoid pain, so do others want to avoid pain. But there are many other Buddhist practices in this sphere as well, and particularly the idea that because we have been born and we have died for many, many lifetimes, while we fixate on our family members and our friends in this life, and we do a lot to make them happy, every other living being has at some point been our friends and family. Why don't we reflect on them in that way and also do what we can to make everyone happy? So that's changing a concept about how we perceive the relationships to then help us change an emotion. The deluded type. Okay, well, probably this type first of all needs to calm down a little, but also to see one of the basic ideas is dependent origination. One of the big problems here is, for example, the idea of thinking that the pleasure lies in the object itself, right? That this object is inherently pleasurable or inherently mine. But to reflect on that whole process as being a conditional process, right? That helps for the deluded type. For the conceit type, now a lot of the idea of conceit and being self-centered is very much a comparison between myself and others. And in Buddhist terms, it doesn't just mean conceit in the sense of I think I'm better than others. You can also get the reverse, which is in like an inferiority complex, when I think that others are somehow inherently better than me. That in Buddhist terms is also a kind of conceit, because it's focused on me. This is who I am. This is who you are. I am inherently this, you are inherently that, and I make a comparison. But when we do these things, we just pick one little thing to compare with others, right? I've got a higher paying job than you, ha ha ha. Okay, well that's only, how much money you make is only one little part of who we are, right? Why don't we look at other things? Who here has arms? None of you have arms? Well, of course, that's why you don't put your hand up. Okay, sorry. Who has arms? Put your hand up. Who has legs? Who has eyes? A nose? You don't have any of these things. A mouth? Now, with respect to these things, are we not just the same as everyone else in this room? So why do we think we're so special and better than others? Or inferior to others? Right? We can choose to focus on another thing to reduce that comparison. The scattered type, one of the best things to do is probably to focus on the breath meditation. The mind can get very distracted in externals, like in some other world. And I think in modern day, a lot of our jobs that we have, because it's such a huge amount of information, it's not like in the old days. Most people's jobs are probably agriculture, out there in the field, plow in the field, right? What do you have to think today? You get up in the morning, look at the weather, decide what your work's going to be for the day, do your work. The body and the mind are coordinated. There's exercise. Makes for quite a coordinated, integrated, and thus happy, healthy physical and mental state. But a lot of our work now is done probably sitting with very bad posture in front of a screen, right? Huge amount of information coming in. You go home at the end of the day, you try to go to sleep. Well, what happens? You can't sleep. But why? You haven't done anything. All you've been doing is sitting in a chair. You're kind of exhausted, but you kind of actually can't sleep. You want to kind of rest, but the brain is like me, and it's nothing really important. It's just like a whole lot of stuff that the brain's going on. There's a scattered type, very much like this. Meditation's on being aware of the physical body and the breath, very efficient in this regard. Bring the focus into this present space. And the mixed type could use any method. So as I said, these methods are in general, but we all have all of these problems, right? But the key thing is to start from our biggest problem first, work on that first. And if we go further into Buddhist practice, then we'll actually probably want to develop several of these meditative techniques. Right? That's the real trick. So you get to a point whereby I know when I'm in situations that will arouse my desire, I can use my mind to deal with it in this way. But when I'm in situations where I'm more inclined to conceit, I can use another technique to deal with that. Right? I've got a whole range of methods and practices to deal with a whole range of problems. When I first made this slide, which was quite a while ago now, I don't know. I kind of like this picture and I put it in, but then I finally realized here there's a very good, this is the right place. I finally got to the right place where I should show this. This is from the 70s. Two monks who did a pilgrimage from LA to north of San Francisco. 3 steps in one bow. There's Venerable Huifeng in the front. They did a particular practice. This kind of a practice is it's very strong faith-based practice, prostration, very devout. It's often sometimes said that this kind of practice is actually suitable for the desirous personality type, because religious devotion and faith is actually like a positive side of desire. Right? Desire, like, wants the object. I want that thing. It's pleasant. Give me more of it. Religious devotion is, I want more, but with regard to, say, a religious figure or or some sort of spiritual practice. Right? So they're actually similar. The more, the better. but desirous with regards to, sensual pleasure, whereas faith-based practices are with regard to spiritual practice. Okay, now we've got to go through these orders. So we've got to go from the physical and the verbal, and how do we deal with that first, right? So our orders go back the other way. The Buddhist practice or training in morality deals with external actions. On one side, it says there are certain negative actions that we should refrain from, and on another side, certain wholesome actions that we should engage in. Right? But it's only talking about the external things. Now, if we're talking about, for example, if we go back to the first part of how this problem begins, if we're in an environment with a lot of very stimulating and very attractive objects, I don't know, I haven't been to the beach in LA, but of course it's kind of famous worldwide, right? All the sexy people are out there on the beach. There's an environment that's going to be very stimulating to us, right? If we're trying to cultivate our mind, but we're constantly putting ourselves in an environment which is very tempting, it's going to be hard work, right? Well, for example, if we said, I'm going to quit alcohol, I'm not going to drink alcohol, but I'm still going to go out with my friends to the bar on Friday night. Sound like a good option? And risky, right? So likewise, when we work on this level, if we're trying to work on the mind, but we're constantly creating negative external environments, it's going to be really hard work, right? So we have to start from these basics. A lot of times, people will say about Buddhist practice, it doesn't matter about your external actions, it's only about your state of mind. But that ignores the relationship between the two, right? And there is a relationship. It's silly to sort of deny that. So on one side, we want to avoid the negative actions because that creates a negative environment. But we also need to be proactive and do positive actions as well to create a positive environment too. It's only when we begin from the external that it's easier to then work on the mind because the greater environment around us is supporting it, right? In the basic sense, morality, Buddhist practice begins from the 5 lay precepts: to refrain from taking life, to refrain from theft, to refrain from sexual misconduct. So this doesn't mean one has to be celibate to be Buddhist at all. But the basic idea is what is considered acceptable in this society. Right? Recently, a lot of people ask, for example, about, say, gay marriage. What's the Buddhist take on it? Buddhism doesn't really have any specific takes on it. But if you took the spirit of the Buddhist teachings, I think it would be fairly safe to say if that nation or that place considers that socially acceptable, then that's okay. Right? The 4th one is to refrain from false speech, so against lying. And the last one is to refrain from intoxicants. Now, the last one in particular is interesting because it says, taking intoxicants, say for example, taking alcohol, is not inherently evil or bad. However, the fact is, under the influence of an intoxicant, our ability to control the mind and refrain from negative states of mind is impaired. Right? So while it itself is not intrinsically bad, once again, by using a material substance and putting it into the body, it will affect the mind. Right? So we still need to see that relationship between the two. Then we go into the 8-day fasting precepts. The main step there is to not just have these 5, but to also refrain from the more basic forms of sensual indulgence that we engage in. So it's very simple. For most people, it's very boring. Like no TV, no movies, no music. But actually, by reducing those, our ability to then work with the mind is increased because we're not constantly stimulating the mind in the process. And then, of course, the monastic precepts. In the Eightfold Path, this is right speech, right action, and right livelihood, for those of you who are doing some of our Buddhist studies classes here. What do you see? What do you see? Well-trained dogs? Okay. Because I know Monica here, so I know Monica's a real animal lover. What else do you see apart from the dogs? Deluded cat. Okay, what kind of emotional state is the cat in? Is that a scared cat? Not at all. In fact, if I know cats, That tail, that's quite a confident cat, actually. So why is it not afraid of the dogs? They're very well trained. What kind of dogs do you think these are? I'm not sure, but... Yeah, but... Probably police dogs, that's my guess, right? And have the dogs seen the cat? Has the cat seen the dogs? How could it miss them? Right? But it's not even looking at them. It doesn't see the dogs as a threat. The dogs are all looking at the cat, even the ones at the back, but they're still seated, right? Probably. I'm guessing that like over here, there's maybe a police officer. The dogs are totally restrained physically, right? Like a good, well-trained police dog, right? Stay. It stays. Get him. Ooh. Boom. Done for. I'm wondering if the dogs, how do you think the dogs are feeling internally though? What emotional state are they in? Do you think they're like, oh, it's a cute little kitty cat? They're probably like, just give me the word. Just give me the word. Give me the word. Okay, so the precepts can be like this. They're physically well restrained. And thus it's not like a big mess here and like cat fur flying, right? So it's a peaceful scene. But it doesn't mean that the problems are all solved. There's still the potential. There's still the potential that one of the dogs will lose it. Yeah, probably not. Okay. So the precepts are a lot like this, right? They're well restrained, but internally the emotions might still be there. I think that's a really cool picture. Oh, that cat. What you gonna do? You can't find me. You get in trouble. Okay. Then we need to go into the next stage. Once we've dealt with the externals and external behavior, then we can work on the meditative stage. This deals with stage 2, and it really only deals with the active mental afflictions. Right? Like the overwhelming desire to chase a cat, or the overwhelming desire to eat too much chocolate cheesecake, or to buy excessively priced jeans. These kinds of things. And also the concepts as well, right? Now the definition of meditation in Buddhism is, there's a couple of different ones, but one is single-minded state of mind. So the mind is focused on a single point or a single object. Those objects are the different things we talked about for the different personality types, right? You pick one of these objects that's specifically going to deal with or resolve a particular mental affliction, you settle the mind on it and you focus it on that particular object. You don't let it wander off and get distracted, you just let it settle on that object and develop greater concentration and focus. And it's a process of balance. There's a lot of balance involved there. And broadly speaking, it goes from a coarse, distracted state of mind, probably like, at the moment we're probably we're in a regular state of mind. We're still distracted, we're still thinking about stuff, right? We're still seeing things. Probably if we went outside here, into the courtyard, the state of mind might get a bit coarser because there's more different objects and things. Or if we took you downtown LA, what's it going to be like? Probably even more distracted. There's a lot of things in the mind. The mind has to pay attention to a lot of things. There's different emotions going on. So it goes from a state of coarse distraction to fine calm. And when one becomes very focused on a single object, from attention and fixing of the mind, what happens is the mind naturally starts to, the fact that it doesn't have these afflictions, the very absence of afflictions itself actually leads to a pleasant experience. And it's not a pleasant experience because of a pleasant object. It's just the happiness and joy that comes from not having afflictions. Now most people, that's a really big idea, that you could have pleasure or happiness but not through some object. That you've got to have something that makes you happy. No. The mind itself is just very calm and focused. Certain types of pleasure and happiness come about from that until the mind reaches what we call a state of purity and equanimity. Okay. Mind becomes very calm. This is not an easy process, but it is possible. In the Eightfold Path, this includes right mindfulness and right concentration, or right meditation. Mindfulness is just simply settling the mind on the object. returning it, we get distracted, you bring it back, you return it, we get distracted, we bring it back. But when that focus becomes deeper and deeper, there's almost like a transformation that goes on in the mind. It's a bit like a phase change. You know, you're from ice to water to gas. There's this like whole phase change that goes on. Or the mind becomes, usually the mind's got like a lot of different thoughts and emotions that are just constantly ticking over. And then it just becomes simply focused on a single thing. You could take another example, maybe, of using a magnifying glass or a lens to focus light. Right? The light might come in from all different sources, but you can focus it in onto a single point. Now, while we're in that state, the afflictions are not going to go on. Okay, but as those of you who have started to do meditation practice go, okay, so you feel so good doing your meditation, and then the class is over, and you get up, and you get in your car to go home, and what happens? Every crazy driver is still out there in your meditative calm. You left it back in the meditation hall, right? So this is only temporary, because those seeds are still there. Those seeds are still there. But at least temporarily we can be, which one do you want to be? I hope you be the smiley one. Okay. But if we turn this picture upside down, there's still that potential that we're going to be the other person. Hello? Okay. Thus, to deal with the final phase, we still need the last training, the training in wisdom. Now, what happens is usually the mind is so lumpy, it's got so much stuff going on, we can't see the deeper levels, right? It's like going into, if we use the example of the garden, all the plants are growing up. They're already like covering all over this garden, right? You hack down the weeds, but what happens? They just grow back up again, right? You hack them down, they grow back up again. So what do we need to do? We need to pull them out by the root, right? And also make sure that they're not putting seeds back into the soil at the same time. But if you've got a really big tree, can you just pull it out by the roots? Probably not, right? You probably have to like cut it down first, and then you can like get to the root. So this is the same idea here. You can't, theoretically, you could just go for the roots or just go for the seeds, but it's not. It doesn't work like that in practice. So you've got to work from the outside, getting, slowly working your way in, slowly working your way in. Okay, now wisdom or insight or knowledge must be based on morality and meditation. It's very easy, well maybe it's not that easy, it's definitely possible to read lots of Buddhist books and like sound like you're like an amazingly awakened chant master or something like that, and spout all sorts of supposedly wise words at other people, It's like, I had a really bad day at the office and all these things happened, blah, 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 blah. And you just go, just let it all go. Okay, it's easy to say these sorts of things. But we can really see whether or not somebody's getting there or it really has any insight. It's a much more difficult process. You need to really see how they act in regular life. Now, if we can let's continue with the example of the seeds. If the seeds are in the soil, we've got to slowly cut down the plant till finally you can pull it out by the roots. Pull the seeds out of the ground. Right? You can pull the seeds out of the ground. Once the seeds, and there's no weeds in the ground, then it doesn't matter if the rain comes and the sun shines, there's simply nothing to grow up. Right? Or if we can use another example, like a pond of water, right? There might be all sorts of gunk and mud in the pond that we want to get out of the pond. But usually if the wind is blowing very strongly, what will happen? There'll be little ripples and the water gets choppy and, right? You can't see clearly into the water to see what's at the bottom there. You need to let it calm down. The water will clarify, become clear at the top, the dirt will sink to the bottom, and then we can see deeply into the water. We can see what's really inside, like the subconscious mind below the surface. So when one gets into this deeper meditative state, all sorts of things can be seen that we might not have seen before. And we can also deal with them as well. The mind needs to be focused like a laser, right? Laser is really interesting. Well, I've got a laser here, haven't we? I mean, this is already a laser. It's just basically light, but it's focused, right? Once upon a time I was an engineer, and we went around to some large manufacturing companies. There was one company whose job was to cut sheet metal. They used to cut steel, 4-inch thick. What are you going to cut 4-inch thick steel plate with? What are you going to use? Yeah. Water. Well, are you an engineer?
I've seen that before happen.
You've seen it before. But how do you cut 4-inch thick steel with water?
Very precise, very lot of pressure.
Incredible pressure through an incredible tiny hole, right? You cut it with water. And normally our mind's like water. It's kind of flopping around. Blip, 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 blip. Gunky, dirty water. You got to focus it on that tiny, tiny point and maintain that until it's this jet. You know, if it cuts through 4-inch thick steel plate, imagine what it would do to your finger. It would cut through anything. And it can also cut into these afflictions within the mind. Or we could use the example of a magnifying glass. The usual sunlight won't set fire to the trees outside, right? But if you put it through a magnifying glass and you focus it, you can burn into those things. It can burn out these seeds, burn out these afflictions that we can now see clearly. Once the afflictions are removed, we return to the original nature of the mind. The other mental functions still keep working. We can still see things, hear things, smell, taste, touch. We can think. We can still have pleasure and still have pain. We can still have concepts. But when we have pleasure and pain, we do not respond with craving and aversion. When we see things for what they are, we do not respond by making them into me, mine, and thus other afflictions like I'm better than you, and these other things go on. In fact, they'll go on even better than before because they're not tainted by those emotions, and they're not twisted by the way in which we want to see the world, but we see the world as it really is. This is your mind. This is no mind. That is knowing the mind, cultivating the mind. This morning's talk on Buddhist psychology. Thank you very much for your time.